I am so nervous. Today is one of the biggest days of my life because I'm asking for the chance to be free and to not die in prison. I want to thank my parents and my loved ones and all the people who support me that are here today. Because I wouldn't be here without them. And this decision will affect my parents and significantly change their lives if I'm free. You know, they're 69 and 72, and I want to live out their remaining years with them. And I don't want them to die while I'm in here. And I recognize that today also affects the families of Drew and Trish. You know, I accept their anger. And I don't blame them for opposing my petition, because if I were them, I might feel the same way. I might be angry or sad or afraid. I don't know what's in their heart, but I don't expect their forgiveness. I can only hope for their understanding that I am a different person than I was 25 years ago. I want to tell them that I am so sorry for the terrible loss that you've suffered and for the role that I played in it. I can't imagine your pain. I know that the pain doesn't stop after a period of grieving. It resurfaces over and over again, and you feel that loss of their presence in your life like a hole that can't be filled. And I wish that I could do anything to change what happened. I wish that I had done better. You know, before I met Rick in 2000, I was in a very, very different place. I was freshly 21. I worked a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 desk job at a construction company. After high school, I spent a year at Purdue to learn physics, but I wasn't mature.
21 when she met her co-defendant, Rick Hull, the man who later would write an affidavit saying she's a, quote, innocent lady and should not be behind bars. We're going to pause it right there. We'll get you back in after this break, continuing to watch this resentencing hearing for Sarah Pender.
The disappearance of Anna Walsh.
Her husband now charged with her murder.
All eyes on this accused killer.
The disappearance of Anna Walsh murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Tonight, on closing arguments, unpacking the evidence against Brian Walsh as he stands trial for the murder of his wife. We'll show you everything you may have missed from today's gripping testimony.
Closing arguments with Vinny Politan tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. Let's get you back inside of the Indiana courtroom where we are watching together the Sarah Pender resentencing hearing. We're listening to her make her plea to the judge to try and get her sentence reduced, one that is 110 years. And she's actually speaking directly to the judge now. Let's pick it up where we left off.
I wasn't mature enough to balance life responsibilities, so I quit school and got a job. I lived alone during this period, and I didn't realize how lonely that I would be. I was sexually abused as a child, which I realize now led me to cling to anyone who would give me attention, whether it was coworkers, neighbors, even strangers. And that's how I met Jesse in April of 2000. I was tired and tipsy and afraid to drive home, so I asked to sleep on his couch. And that did not end well for me. After he violently raped me, I became constantly afraid and super glued to others. I didn't even let a lady move in with me for free just to not be alone. And it was her who introduced me to Rick. We were at a concert, and he stuck out to me immediately because he was a bear. When our group dispersed, I didn't know where to go, and Rick put his huge arm around me and said, "Don't worry, kid, I'll take care of you." And I believed him. A month later, I met him again, and immediately my friend moved out and Rick moved in. The following week, he invited Drew and Trish to move in. And less than 3 months later, they were dead. In October, the week prior to their death, I began getting anonymous voicemails from Jesse saying that he was watching me and saying hateful things and threatening to kill me. My family and friends and coworkers all heard the messages and encouraged me to get personal protection, to not be left alone, and to call the police. I asked the police for help, and they said that they couldn't help me until I had more evidence. And it was the final message that was sent 2 days before the murders that they just paralyzed me with fear. And this deep and garbled and angry voice, Jesse graphically described his plans to rape me a second time. And I'm telling you this because I want you to understand why I made the irresponsible and incomprehensible choices, and why I felt safe with a man like Rick, and why when he asked me to buy him a gun that I said yes. On October 25th, 2000, I had gone out shopping with my stepmother, and Trish and I were being typical young women, looking through all the clothes that I bought. You know, we were close in that way. Trish was my friend. She was such a good person. We laughed and we cried together. But she wasn't afraid of life like I was. She wasn't afraid of turmoil. She was so brave. And when Drew and Rick got into an increasingly heated argument later that night, I walked away from the house. I didn't stand up to Rick or try to calm him down. I had learned that I just had to go along to get along. You know, I wish I had gotten Trish to leave with me, but I didn't appreciate that my tolerance of Rick's rage would lead to such horrible consequences. When I returned to the house, I should have run away like my hair was on fire the first chance I got. You know, I should have, but I didn't. There are 3 responses to danger: either fight, flight, or freeze. And I froze. I stood just 10 feet away from Rick, who was 6'4", had been an offensive lineman and an all-star wrestler. I threw up my hands and I did what he told me to do. I gave in just like I gave in to my rapist. And just like I survived childhood sex abuse, I knew I had to go along to get along. So I helped him hide his crimes and flee. Over the next 2 days with him, I never felt like I had any choice but to keep going along, believing that I would suffer his punishment if I didn't. I saw what happened to people who didn't go along. Later, at my 2005 PCR hearing, Rick admitted how he had lied and set me up with false evidence. He testified that if I had resisted in any way that night, that he would have killed me without hesitation. And I know that I deserve to be punished for what I did wrong and for what I did not do right. I could have prevented the murders if I had not been making so many other poor choices for myself at age 21. I should have never been with a drug dealer or let him convince me to buy me a gun, or let him convince me to buy him a gun. But I really wanted to be loved and protected, and I accepted things that I shouldn't have because I thought I was in love with Rick.
Sarah Pender there reading her lengthy statement to the judge. We're hitting the pause button on it because I got to get reaction from criminal defense attorney Silva Megardician, who is with us. Silva, thanks so much for joining, and I got to get your analysis on this defendant. I mean, is she coming across to you genuine? How do you think a judge is going to be receiving the way that she is presenting her case?
You know, Julia, first of all, congratulations on the new show. It's fantastic, and thanks for having me on today. Okay, Julia, so I actually do resentencing hearings myself, and I think what's really important is that the judge does hear from the client, and accountability is what the judge is looking for. Addressing the victims' families is what the judge is looking for. And notes of rehabilitation. What Sarah's doing is she's taking the judge back to her state of mind at the time when she was 21 years old. I think, I don't want her to spend too much time. If I was her lawyer, I would just say, look, focus on who you were and how you've changed, but don't spend too much time trying to get sympathy about who you were at that time. I think it's much more effective. And I always tell my clients, the path to rehabilitation is your growth after a crime that you know you've committed, but the fact is that person is no longer who you are. And everything you do to change that is what the judge is looking for, because the judge wants to make sure not only are you accepting your responsibility, even though the prosecutor said that he realizes her role was much less. She is a victim of trauma. She talks about that. But the judge really wants to see, remember, Julia, she escaped, right? For 5 years. She was in solitary confinement for 5 years. There's also a prison time that she tried to escape. All of that, it's really important that Sarah explains her thought process to show the judge she's not this person anymore, she's rehabilitated, and she's ready to pay back to society and the victims' families.
I love that we're getting to see this from the criminal defense side, because she is spending a lot of time on when she was 21 and even sex abuse as a child. I mean, that is a very real mitigator in so many situations. But how do you think the judge is going to take that into account here? We saw it with the Menendez brothers. That is something that was really brought to the forefront in their resentencing. But is it something that this judge is going to need more information about if it wasn't brought up during the actual trial?
Julia, it's such a great question. It absolutely is something that the judge will take into account. But the issue is, you have to be careful as a defendant that's seeking another chance. You can't blame your existence on your crime. Everyone has trauma. And, whenever I talk about rehabilitation, I always talk about everyone. Everybody, unfortunately, has horrific trauma in their life. And those who don't are so lucky, right? But most of us don't commit heinous crimes. Most of us aren't convinced to do things against our will. Most of us try to give back to society or get therapy or do things to rehabilitate or not begin the cycle of violence or sexual abuse again. I want her to focus more, right, on what she has done to change, rather than explain to the judge maybe something that, again, she can explain, but don't harp on it. Again, the purpose of resentencing, Julia, the purpose of why we're in court when we argue for our clients to get a second chance is why they deserve it, what they've done proactively to grow. And I think that's the essential aspect, and I really want her to focus on that for sure.
We'll see if she changes course there inside of the courtroom and really spends more time on that. Silva, stand by. We're going to get to our break. When we come back, we'll take you back into that Indiana courtroom for more of this riveting resentencing. Stay with us. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We're headed back to Indianapolis, where Sarah Pender, a convicted double murderer, is asking the court to grant her an early release from prison. She's already served about 25 years of a 110-year prison sentence for the murders of her two roommates, Andrew Cataldi and his girlfriend, Tricia Normand. This all happened back in 2000. Now, during the time that Pender was behind bars, she escaped from prison in 2008 with the help of a prison guard, and she was on the lam for months before she was captured. Once she was back in custody, she was held in solitary confinement for 5 years before she returned to general population. She actually sued the system and won over that violation of her civil rights. The prosecutor who convicted Pender in 2002 once described her as a female Charles Manson, but he is now on the record as supporting her release from prison. He's no longer the prosecutor, and the relatives of those two victims, they also oppose her release. So let's get you back into the courtroom now. Sarah Pender continuing to talk to the judge about why she deserves this early release.
Just justice to sleep in a dark room. It was quiet. And justice to wander in an art museum and feed ducks in the park. Although I lived quietly while free, there were a lot of collateral consequences that I did not see until much later. I regret the stress and fear that I caused Drew and Trisha's family, my family, and the entire prison system and the town of Rockville, because I know that there were a lot of sleepless nights and money wasted on finding me. At the time, I felt completely justified in my actions because I thought that I was a victim and that no one was going to come save me, and that escaping was a way to save myself. But I was wrong. I wasn't justified, and I paid a horrible price for it. I spent 5 years in solitary confinement. I was confused and angry when month after month and year after year the warden refused to let me out without any explanation. Both people who had helped me escape, Jamie and Scott, had already completed their entire prison sentences. They were already gone home while I was still crying and shivering in luck. While I was in solitary, I still experienced life as a human being, and I lived through all of the emotions. Hope for release, fear of the never-ending isolation, sadness, loneliness, and frustration. I dealt with heartbreak and processing and healing my personal issues. I worked really hard to help myself, to educate myself, to examine my past and my morals and values. And I did my best to stay above water. But while I struggled to keep it together, I heard other women falling apart. One woman who screamed at the guards, and sometimes at imaginary people, would often cry and bang her head against the wall between us. I don't remember her name because there were hundreds of women who passed through segregation, and they all got to leave without me. But when that woman would start screaming and thumping her head, it hurt me. And so I started singing to her, and it calmed her down. But sometimes I cried harder than she did. When it came my turn to have an emotional meltdown, I got no sympathy. The first time I really, really broke down, it was late, probably 2 o'clock in the morning. I had been processing my rape trauma, and my tears, they turned to sobs and then wails until I was face down, just drooling and snotting and screaming like I was some wounded animal. And for an hour I wailed and I grieved, and the only comfort that I received from my neighbors was someone yelling down the range for me to shut up. A year later, I suffered a real psychotic break with reality. It wasn't loud and crazy. It happened quietly. I became confused, and I couldn't remember the rules to a card game or understand even the meanings of the shapes and numbers on the cards. My mind felt like it was just ripping in half, and part of it was floating away. And when the guard found me on the floor, I was catatonic. I remember staring at the walls just for days and having no thoughts, just nothing. Eventually, I got up from the mat, I cleaned myself up, and I moved on. What else was there to do? I was hurt, but I also felt better. And I've used that lesson now 100 times over, that the trauma and the pain of the past, it must be processed in order to get rid of it. And so I face about it, and I talk about it in therapy. Whatever punishment that I deserve for my crimes, from assisting Rick to escaping, I have paid for it 10 times over, with 25 years in prison, and 5 years, a month, and 12 days in isolation. I would not wish those 5 years on anyone, no matter what crimes they committed. Those 5 years of torture, and it took all my strength and all I've learned to survive them. I've done a lot of therapy since then, both with mental health professionals and on my own. Self-help books, journaling, deep conversations with others who are far smarter than me. I've sorted through a lot of emotional junk, and being alone all those years gave me the chance to think and to assess and dig out the roots to understand myself. and the world and the people around me. I realized that I trusted people too easily, so I worked better. Worked on being better at character assessment and seeing red flags in people and situations before it became a problem. In other words, I finally learned to run the other way like my hair was on fire. I was finally released from solitary confinement in 2014. I'll spare you the details of the post-traumatic stress and anxiety attacks that left me bawling and rocking and teeth chattering after I returned to open population. Sometimes it was triggered by an unexpected touch or a loud noise. Just know that it was awful and overwhelming all the time. Yet, with medication and mental health treatment and support of my family and friends, I've worked through it. Once in open population, I kept a positive attitude and did all I could to take advantage of opportunities. I took classes for poetry and creative writing, college courses with Dr. Kaufman. She told you all about my work with the program and constructing our future. I also completed a culinary arts program and volunteered for special events while taking classes to learn about myself, my thought patterns and errors, and the things that had influenced my poor choices when I was younger. I found it really rewarding to work as a legal aid at the law library, where I got to help women navigate the complex and sometimes incomprehensible legal system. A lot of women in prison, they struggle with basic literacy and they don't even understand basic notices. I helped one woman reduce her sentence by 17 years. 17 years of her life back, and that is life-changing. I recently spoke with another woman who reminded me that I helped her with her appeal. And I helped women with visitation rights, custody, PCR, and civil rights, not for money, because I made less than $1 per day. But it's a gift of service to make a difference to those women and their families. After helping women succeed in their own legal actions and supporting them in preparing for reentry, I've been able to form my own reentry plan. And if you allow me to be free, my mother will pick me up and take me to Arizona. I will live at home with my mom and my aunt, who are financially stable and laid-back little old ladies. I have my own room, my car, computer to start mental health appointments and to sign up for online classes. I'm set up with a new in-person therapist in Arizona who has experience working with people who have been released from prison. And you've heard that I have a remote job offer with Dr. Kaufman and an office job with Wayne Hyatt at his construction company.
We have to hit a break, but she's just starting to talk about what she would plan to do if she was released, and she's going to keep talking about her personal improvement, the 23+ years that she has been behind bars. Stay with us. You're watching Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Disappearance of Anna Walsh.
Her husband now charged with her murder.
All eyes on this accused killer.
The disappearance of Anna Walsh murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Tonight, on closing arguments, unpacking the evidence against Brian Walsh as he stands trial for the murder of his wife. We'll show you everything you may have missed from today's gripping testimony.
Closing arguments with Vinny Politan tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. We are watching together the resentencing hearing for a double murderer, someone who was convicted, Jo Pender. This is all happening in Indiana. She was convicted in the fatal shootings of her 2 roommates back in 2000. And during the time that she was a prisoner, after she was convicted, she did escape prison and then months later was returned to prison and has been serving a 25-year sentence, 25 years rather, of a 110-year sentence. And she's been begging for mercy in front of a judge inside of a courtroom after she filed a petition for early release. Let's listen in to Jo Pender continuing to state her case.
Each day at lunch, I would sit in my dorm window and I wait for Amanda to walk by, so just we could briefly connect with a hand on the glass. And every day, she gave me a gift by throwing breadcrumbs in front of my window just so I could watch the birds do their little birdie things. We were so good together. We won art contests at Christmas, and we sat quietly together, crocheting scarves for children in need in our hometown. And one of my most fond memories is a time when we tuned our radios to a love song and slow danced like an old couple on their 50th wedding anniversary. Amanda was released from prison in 2021. We talked every day. Our family supported us. We were in love. She stayed with me despite the distance. We're married in prison in 2023, and she died in 2024 after a really hard fight against a rare form of ovarian cancer. I wanted to be with Amanda for the rest of my life. We were perfect together. We were balanced. She taught me to practice healthy boundaries, and I taught her to unravel her emotional baggage. We never abused one another or broke up. We always worked through our disagreements. Who I was with Amanda is a far, far distance from the person I was when I was with Rick 25 years ago. I am no longer codependent or afraid of rejection or unsure of myself or incapable of saying no. Now I'm emotionally healthy, I'm assertive, I have clear boundaries and solid morals that I do not compromise for anyone anymore. My friends know me for being trustworthy, responsible, and helpful, but I'm no longer an enabler of other people's bad behaviors because I don't choose unhealthy behaviors. I no longer gloss over the red flags and the warnings that I should have seen in the people I spent time with 25 years ago. I wish I had been stronger, smarter, and more sure of myself when I was 21. I wish I would have known what to do, how to handle the crisis, how to ask for help before things got out of control. I wish Drew and Trish were still alive and that all of us were out there living our best lives. I wish things were different, but I might as well be wishing upon a star because I can't change a single thing that happened back then. I have, however, changed myself. Through therapy and deep self-reflection, I have changed my thought patterns, I've changed my choices, I have changed my life. And today, I am asking for the chance to keep moving forward on this trajectory and to help make beauty and to enjoy and better the world around me, no matter where I go. You know, I've not been perfect. I've made plenty of mistakes along the way, but I'm not that person who has to go along to get along. I know better now, and I do better, far, far better. I believe the punishment that I deserved for what I did and what I didn't do has been paid in total for 25 years, including those 5 years in isolation. I am 46 years old. I have no chance to bear children. I have very limited time with my parents, and I have lost the luxuries of youth. I've squandered the chances to make memories with my loved ones. You know, there were dozens of choices that I could have made differently back then. That might have changed the outcome of this tragedy. I could have stayed sober. I could have said no. I could have called the police. I could have left at any time, but I didn't. Because I was a yes girl. And a people pleaser and afraid. I'm not that person anymore. Did you and Trisha's families? I do not expect your forgiveness, but I still want to say that I am sorry for the tragic and violent deaths that Drew and Trish. I mourn for your families. The people left behind are the ones who hurt the most. And I think about how fiercely I love my mother and how there's nothing that can replace a mother's love. And it would devastate me if I lost her. And I wish that Trish's children weren't robbed of that love. Trish was so sweet and kind and beautiful and thoughtful. And if she was still alive, at least there'd be the possibility that she would return home or that she could call and you could hear her voice say, "I love you." And Drew could have went on to raise his own children, to be charming and clever like he was. And his mom, sister, and brother could have heard his voice or set out more plates for Thanksgiving each year. You know, it devastates me that I can't change the past. But, Your Honor, today I'm asking for your mercy to be able to work towards a better future. You know, I eventually want to become a soil science researcher and have a small farm and raise my chickens with my mom and my aunt. My dad and his wife Wendy are willing to uproot themselves and move across the country in order to be near me once I'm settled. If you free me, I will have my freedom and my family, and I can never ask for more. I'm asking, please, to grant my petition and send me home to do what I can to make the best of the years that I have left. And if you grant my petition, I promise that you will never see me again, unless you happen across a farm-to-table dinner or take a trip to the petrified forest on a beautiful random day. I want to go home and enjoy the small luxuries of life.
Sarah Pender there asking the judge to let her get to a farm with chickens. Let's bring back in our guest. And just to let you know what happens there, this happened earlier. The judge is taking her plea under advisement and requested an updated progress report on how she's doing behind bars. So real time, we still don't have a ruling from the judge, but he is expected to issue a ruling at a later date. So criminal defense attorney Silva Megardichian, sorry about that. Silva, what do you think this judge is going to come back with? He said he's going to give a response in due course. What all do you think is going to happen?
Look, Julia, he's going to take everything under advisement. He's going to go through everything, her statement, all the mitigation, the reports from the prison, everything to make his decision. Look, I have to say as a defense attorney, the only thing I would have added is if I were her just to say every day I will make good promises to society and I will never forget the victims and I will live in their honor and by showing that I can be a positive giving back person to society. Whatever I took away, I will give back. I think it's really important for the judge not only to know that she has a plan, you know, to be that farmer. It's like you said, Julia, it's kind of funny because she's asking to essentially be a chicken farmer, which is, it's wonderful to have a goal and a path. But the whole purpose also of rehabilitation is to say that I will give back to society. But I think she might have a really good shot. At least I hope. I see the rehabilitation. I hope the judge does too.
Yeah, we will see together. Silva, thanks so much for that analysis this hour.